The American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials says it would create 8 million jobs over the next 4 years if we could pass a highway bill. We could put people to work in good jobs and fix crumbling roads and bridges.
From a pipeline that may or may not be worth the political trouble at this point to a possible Republican pitfall over immigration. And this guy named Romney who just can't seem to get running out of his language. Let's welcome to MidPoint the senior congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner, David Drucker, joins us. David, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Here we go, David. Keystones all over Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway this week. However, there seems to be a thought process here. Some of the people that we've had on the air. Some say that it's the Republicans who have backed the president into a corner and he can't win. Then you get others who say, wait a minute, the president has backed the Republicans into a corner and they're not going to get their win. So who gets it right?
Well, I don't think anybody's backed anybody into a corner. I think both sides just disagree on this. Republicans and a lot of Democrats think Keystone's a good idea, both on policy and on politics. The president, he looks at it differently. But the difference now is Republicans have control of the House and Senate, and they can actually bring a bill to the floor in the Senate that would authorize the construction of Keystone. And there are enough Democrats to get to 60 votes. So the president has to make a decision about whether he's going to support this thing and sign it or he's going to veto it. Now, in the past, of course, Harry Reid was there to bury anything the president said he would veto. We're just dealing with something different now in terms of the political dynamic.
Let's talk about the vote, because the Senate, according to last report, still needs 4 votes to pass veto-proof legislation. Do you get the sense that they'll be able to get those 4 votes before the actual tally comes up?
I really don't think they're going to. I don't think you've got 67 votes in the Senate for Keystone. And by the way, you do not have a veto-proof majority in the House. You've got a decent amount of Democratic support, but I think you have to get upwards into like 280, 290, something like that. And I just don't see it materializing. Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader in the House, has said that Democrats are going to uphold the president's veto.
David, what's the overall sense inside the Beltway here? Is this something that the Republicans should be chasing at this point? And the reason I say that is there's the consistent job numbers discrepancy that goes back and forth, the fact that this oil will not be used here in America, the fact that we have gasoline down near $2.20 a gallon, and most of the American public doesn't even really seem to care anymore about Keystone.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I haven't actually seen from my reporting any change of heart over Keystone, given just because of low gas prices and improving jobs numbers. If anything, their supporters are just as adamant that it would create even more jobs and maybe bring gas down a little bit more, just because you end up with control over more oil getting to the market and where it's going to get. So I don't think this changes the calculation. I think both sides believe that their policy is the correct one, and you know, for Republicans, the calculation here was, look, we're going to start off with a bipartisan bill. So instead of doing something overtly partisan that we know only Republicans support and no Democrat is going to support, we're going to pick something that Democrats have voted for before, that the labor unions are in favor of, and we're going to test both the Democrats in Congress and see if they're willing to work with us, and we're going to test the president to see if he's willing to sign or veto something that has the support of his party. And in this way, they feel like they're sending a message to the American people that they want to govern. They're sending a message to Republican and conservative voters that they're going to, live by the promises they made in the campaign. And they'll get to more partisan stuff later. But they thought, for all of these reasons, Republicans thought this was a great way for them to open the new Congress.
David, is there any chance, in your estimation whatsoever, of any kind of backroom dealing going on here? Perhaps Republicans give a little bit on immigration, President gives a little bit on Keystone, because let's face it, in Washington, D.C., everything is a backroom deal.
Yeah, you don't actually get anything done that you would like if there's no backroom deal, for everybody who hates backroom deals. That's the only way anything good, people think is good ever gets done around here. However, I'd say this, I don't think you're going to see immigration and Keystone tied together. You are going to see, assuming they get 60 votes today to open debate on the measure in the Senate, you're going to see McConnell, as he promised, open the thing up to amendments. They'll probably be on the bill for a couple of weeks. And so you could see a final Keystone bill in the Senate that ends up, including some Democratic priorities on energy. Who knows? But you're not going to see any quid pro quo, so to speak, that has to do with immigration. That's where the two parties are just too far apart. Even Republicans are still divided amongst themselves on immigration. It's too politically charged of an issue to kind of trade Keystone for immigration. And I don't even see the president going there in any event.
David, you went right where I was going next, and that is the fact that even Republicans themselves are very split on immigration. What do you see happening here when they finally get down to it? How much discourse do you see here? And what sort of resolutions do you see? Because there are people who say that, quite frankly, the Republicans can't get their act together on this one at all.
Yeah, it's really tough for them. But interestingly enough, and I was really surprised, on Friday, just a few days after that contentious vote for Speaker, House Republicans, about 90% of them, which is plenty more than they need, came together on a plan to fund the Department of Homeland Security and begin to go after the president's executive order on immigration. The deadline to do this isn't until February 27th, and here's 7 weeks in advance that the Republicans are agreeing, at least on an opening salvo. They're going to vote on this thing most likely Wednesday of this week. It'll go over to the Senate, and we'll see what the Senate does. So even though this remains very divisive, and even though there's not really a way for them to stop the president from his executive order unless he himself chooses to back down, so it's going to get tough for Republicans. But at least at the beginning, they're showing some consensus and an ability to work together amongst themselves. That's a lot more than I expected this early on, so we'll see where it goes.
David, what's the general consensus that you're getting, the general feeling inside the Beltway of this guy named Mitt something?
Oh, what's his face? Yeah,
yeah.
You know, funny. I'm still trying to make up my mind. You know, if we remember the stories, when Romney tells the story about deciding whether to run in 2012, he talks about taking a poll of his family, close family members, and he was among the people who voted against running. But all of a sudden, he's really interested in running. I don't know that everybody's sold on the fact that he's as serious as he says he is, but I've spoken to sources that would tend to know where Mitt's head is at, and they seem to think he's sold on it. He's really serious. So you could end up seeing a Jeb versus Mitt clash of the so-called Republican establishment. I don't know that at the end of the day this really changes the calculation for the race overall, because Jeb's still going to be formidable. You're going to see a lot of other Republicans run that I think are also going to be formidable. I'm just never sold that the front runner or the supposedly unbeaten juggernaut wins. You know, don't forget, Hillary Clinton was supposed to be the 2008 Democratic nominee. Obama was like this young, up-and-coming, he should run later, what's he doing? And he ends up being the nominee and the two-term president. So we'll see what happens, but apparently Romney is serious. If he gets in, it scrambles a little bit the establishment fundraising. On the other hand, him getting in probably brightens the prospects for others, whether you're talking about Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, or anybody else that is looking at this, even Chris Christie, because all of a sudden it's not Jeb versus everybody else in that sort of governing wing of the party.
It's so much fun right now, and it's only getting started. David Drucker, the Washington Examiner, thanks so much for joining us, David. We'll look forward to talking to you again.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, back next, Bulls and Bears.